Welcome to Study Loop.
For this question, we are being asked to look at the differences between ectotherms and endotherms and apply that to net production efficiency, or NPE. So let's begin by looking at ectotherms and endotherms. Ectotherms are those organisms that you are probably most familiar with under the term cold-blooded. Their name, if you break it down, ecto is related to external and therm, or heat. This means that these are organisms that rely on heat sources that are external to them for the heat energy needed to maintain their internal body temperature. One example might be a lizard that you might find sunning itself on a rock out somewhere in the desert because, again, it needs the sunlight to maintain its own internal temperature. Endotherms, on the other hand, are organisms like humans, who use their own bodies to make heat and energy. If you break it down, endo is like inside, and therm, again, is like heat. And these are your warm-blooded creatures, quote unquote. Now, endotherms make their heat through metabolism, usually. So the processes of digestion and breaking down certain chemicals from the food that we eat is what produces our internal body temperature. Sometimes, if you're maybe in an environment that's too cold, you might shiver. That's another way that we maintain our internal body temperature. It's from our own body doing the work and not the outside world or the environment. That's the biggest difference. And so now that we have those differences laid out, let's take a look at what net production efficiency is. So NPE is essentially a measure of how each trophic level, or each level of the food chain or food web, is able to transfer energy from one level to the other. This is by being consumed or by taking energy from the sun or other abiotic sources along this chain. Essentially, it is a measure of how efficiently energy passes through the ecosystem, starting from the sun in most ecosystems, all the way up to the highest level consumer. Now, how does this relate to our question in the first place? Well, if you think about it, here we have a primary producer, a plant. And this plant takes in light energy from the sun and uses that to undergo photosynthesis, and that creates glucose, which is a form of chemical energy that is stored in these glucose molecules. That leaves this plant with a lot of energy. Now, in order to survive, this plant has to expend some of that energy just in order to make it through its day-to-day metabolic and survival tasks, like growth or photosynthesis, or any number of things that need to happen, like pollen production. As a result, when this plant is feasted upon by these insects aren't getting the total energy that the plant got from the sun in the first place. They're getting a remainder of energy that wasn't used by the plant itself. Similarly, these insects have their own body processes to do that uses energy. Like a lot of these insects that I drew here are all flying insects. Flying takes up energy. As a result, when these insects are eaten by the lizard in our example, then the lizard gets even less energy as a result, because, again, these insects had to use some of their own energy. So at each stage of this food chain, we are seeing a overall decrease in the energy available to the next stage. And how big of a difference there is and how long this chain is are all part of the function of NPE. So now that we've established this definition, let's go back to our two organisms, our ectotherm and our endotherm, and let's think about how this relates to this question. So first, let's think about the lizard that we found at the end of this food chain. He is producing heat energy not from himself, but from moving from place to place in order to gain access to this heat. So there isn't as much continual bodily processes or metabolic processes that are needing to take place in order to maintain this internal body temperature 24/7. As a result, this ectotherm is definitely expending energy, and any organism that consumes it will have access to less energy than he had in the first place. But if we compare it to the endotherm here, she is undergoing constant metabolic processes in order to maintain that internal body temperature. That is a constant sort of input of the energy that she gets from her food, and as a result would leave even less energy to anything that might wish to consume her. Thus, if we sort of zoom out from our two examples, endotherms, as a result of their needing to make their own heat sources within themselves through metabolic processes, they have to expend a lot of the energy they get from food. Thus, if we zoom out into the food chain as a whole, endotherms are going to use a lot more energy and transfer much less energy compared to ectotherms to the next trophic level. And if we go to our answer choices, the one that fits this description is option B, and that is